It's good for the mic? C'est bon? Ouais. All right. Take your time, take a seat. Good. So, bonsoir, good evening, and haremai. I'm Hélène. I'm the Vice President of the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce. There are a few of us from the team here tonight, so I invite you to speak to them if you'd like after the forum. I'm extremely happy to welcome you for our first event of our Sustainability Forum series. So tonight we're going to be speaking about sustainable lifestyle. In June, we're going to be talking about construction and infrastructure and what sustainability means. So if you're interested, we invite you to join us. That's the first time tonight that we are doing a hybrid event. So hi everyone on the screen who's joining us on the video. We are also glad to have you here tonight with us. So it might be hard to believe, but the French Chamber of Commerce has been created about 36 years ago, right? Today we've got 140 members, and it represents 7,000 employees. So a true force for good. And so we believe that at the Chamber, one of our missions is to share those amazing sustainability stories, especially those of L'Oreal, Karma Cola, Danone, and eventually the Sustainable Business Council. So those companies, large corporates or smaller businesses, who've been eventually putting strategy on their agenda, or sometimes make strategy sustainability their strategy. This event could have not happened tonight without some people here in the room. So I would like to thank Aurelie, of course, but also Tanya. And to be fair, we've been speaking about that for a while, so I'm very glad that this is finally happening. Tanya is leading People and Culture and Sustainability at L'Oreal, as well as Corporate Affairs. So if you've got any question about L'Oreal or what's been happening in terms of sustainability, she's the right person. Oh, really? Oh, my God! Anyway, you're conveying that. I really thought you were. Anyway. And also, sorry? So who are they? Ah, perfect. Well, anyway, thanks to the L'Oreal team. And also thanks to NZTE, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, and Chris Lijzenga, who is the sustainability advisor. So thank you very much, because you guys have been absolutely instrumental to make tonight happen. So what's going to happen? First, we're going to have 3 keynote speakers. We're going to be starting by Aurelie de Cremiers, who is the country director for New Zealand at L'Oreal. Then we'll welcome Chris Morrison, co-founder of Karma Cola. And finally, we're going to hear a little bit of how Danone is doing in New Zealand with Fung, who is the Chief Operation Officer. And then we'll have a VIP guest here, Mike Burrell, so I've tried my best, really, who is the Executive Director of the Sustainable Business Council. So after our 3 keynote speakers, Chris is going to lead the panel, so please keep your question, because you're going to have all the time to ask them, so that's cool. And before I'm leaving here, because it starts to feel a bit hot, some safety proceedings. So in case of emergency, you have the exit here on the right and on the left. If you are looking for the bathroom, it's on the right of the kitchen. And also in case of emergency, and if we have to go all downstairs, it's going to be in Federal Street. Yes. In case you're lost, Tanya is going to lead us. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not. Great. So I think I'm done. So enjoy the evening. We hope that this event is going to be helpful, that you're going to learn a lot, and that you're going to be proud of our French, New Zealand enterprise and businesses community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hélène. Thank you to the French Chamber of Commerce for this event, and welcome to the L'Oreal Academy. So you're here where we train about, in a normal year, not last year, about 15,000 beauty specialists. So we train stylists, technicians, hairdressers, beauty advisors, and so it's a very special place for us here. So I also want to welcome all of you, obviously, and some of my L'Oreal team members are present here today. Some of my management committee, welcome. You can wave, they're here. We also have, like Tanya mentioned, our sustainability program leaders. You'll see a picture of them soon. So they're there, Rachel and Alison. We call them. Welcome. And we also have other L'Oréal team members here. So welcome to you all. So it is my pressure. Okay, I've done this mistake once before to our global CEO. This is a true story. So you asked me to be authentic, so I'm going to be authentic. So our global CEO came once to New Zealand to visit L'Oréal New Zealand, and at the end of the speech, when I thanked him, I said, "It's been such a great pressure to have you, Monsieur Agon." So yeah, so it's a great pleasure to have you here and to share a little bit about our mission and what I've done. And I'm not on the first slide. Here we go. Okay, so just a bit of context around who we are in the world. So we've been around for 112 years globally. We have 85,000 employees. We're in 150 countries. We make a lot of sales in billion euros, 29.8 billion euros. We sell 7 billion products every year. 150 products are sold every second in the world. We have 35 brands globally, 39 manufacturing plants, 5,000 new formulas are released each year. We have 21 research centers in the world and 497 patents registered in 2019. Here are all our iconic brands. So some of you will go, "Oh, I didn't know that was from L'Oréal." Yes, indeed. So there are a lot of brands which are not called L'Oréal. I'm letting you see them. The reality is the strategy from the group has been to purchase brands along the way. So hence why we've got all these amazing brands, and they're all divided by 4 divisions. We've got the consumer division, the professional products division, the Luxe division, and active cosmetics division. Our purpose, which has been globally released last year, is to create the beauty that moves the world. So a little bit of context around this. We believe at L'Oréal the beauty is not about looking good, only about looking good. It's about also giving the confidence. And we believe that it also, we help people through that confidence that we build. Our purpose, so it's not only about, how we look in the exterior, but it's also helping inside out. And more importantly, we truly believe that we have a responsibility, because it's not just about selling products and all our beautiful brands and our beautiful lipsticks, etc. We do have a true responsibility. You've just seen the figures. We're everywhere in the world. We have a lot of employees. We do a lot. We're going to see, we probably do a lot of waste, we do all those things, so we have a key responsibility to play in today's world. So we take this really seriously at L'Oréal, and as a country manager, for instance, I'm happy to share with you that my remuneration, my bonus, is based 50% on my financial results and 50% on my non-financial results, which a big part of it is obviously the sustainability program that we have. So here in New Zealand, we are 200 employees, 24 nationalities, 150 beauty advisors, 26 brands. We sell 9+ million products every year. And our mission with my management committee, we've decided all together, and it's a mission that we give all our teams, is number 1, to be a test and learn incubator, so super exciting. We have lots of ideas. We're a smaller country, and we can test a lot of things. Second of all, we really want to embed and make sure that we're a true culture of care, a culture of care for our customers, for obviously our team members, but also and foremost a culture of care for the planet. So that's why we want to be a sustainability champion. In this context, obviously, we have some true commitments and a new program that we've launched, which is called L'Oréal for the Future. So it is, we have acknowledged last year globally at L'Oréal that it is the decade that's ahead of us until 2030, it's arguably the most critical decade. So the stakes are high in terms of climate change for the planet and for humanity. The United Nations has given just 10 years for humanity to address health, social, economic, and climate challenges. So globally, last year, L'Oreal announced our new sustainability commitments entitled L'Oreal for the Future, with clear and measurable objectives for the next 10 years until 2030. So, just to be a bit clear, and this we spoke to Chris just earlier, so we've gone from a program called Sharing a Beauty with All, which was basically around cleaning our own backyard and doing a bit, you know, what we needed to do. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't good. We tried to do something humbly over the past 10 years, but now we've taken a real stance and a real, it is absolutely a super comprehensive program that we're launching, very ambitious. The program that we're launching, which is called obviously L'Oreal for the Future, and we're definitely, our aim is to do from doing less harm to doing better, and all our targets now are science-based targets respecting the planet boundaries. Okay, so what does it actually mean? It means that we have 3 key pillars. I'm not going to go into detail because I've got a film to show you, but basically there's some internal goals and targets that we have, which is about transforming ourselves and respecting the planet boundaries. So there's a lot of not just clean our own backyard. There's a lot of things that we can do beyond and above our own backyard. It's going end to end. Also, number 2 is empowering our business ecosystem. So really helping that transition into a more sustainable world. So it's a lot more external facing. And number 3 is contributing to solving the challenges of the world. And so, and in this instance, we've just donated on a fund 150 million euros to help vulnerable women, but that's globally worldwide. Okay, so then wow, great, here we go. I needed to click, thank you. So then now a short film that will give you the global targets. I will talk after what we're doing here locally. No? Yes.
At L'Oreal, we have long been committed to sustainability. But the world is changing fast, and with higher stakes must come stronger commitments. This is why we are launching L'Oreal for the Future, our new sustainability program. Our strategy is twofold: transforming our activities to respect planetary boundaries and contributing to solving urgent environmental and social challenges. With bold 2030 targets, our goal is to ensure our activities are respectful of the planet's boundaries. 100% of our sites will be carbon neutral by 2025. 100% of the industrial water used in our plants will be recycled and reused by 2030. 100% of our bio-based ingredients and packaging materials will be sustainably sourced by 2030. 100% of the plastics for packaging will come from recycled or bio-based sources by 2030. 100,000 people from underprivileged communities will gain access to employment by 2030. We will make available the information on the environmental and social impact of our products. But reducing our impact is not enough. We want to make a positive contribution to society. We are creating a 50 million euros charitable endowment fund to support highly vulnerable women. We're also allocating 50 million euros to help restore 1 million hectares of degraded ecosystems and 50 million euros to promote a more circular economy. With these objectives, we want to inspire people to take action for a more sustainable future. L'Oreal for the Future.
Okay, so that's what we're committing to globally. So here, just to start, some of the few achievements we've done so far here in New Zealand. So very humbly, So they're not amazing. We're on a journey. There's a lot more that needs to be done. I'll show you what we plan for the next 3 years. So first of all, 100% of the energy provided at the academy where we are currently and our distribution center comes from a renewable energy provider. Then 70, can you see them all? Yeah, good. I'm just checking. 100% of all our POS is eco-designed. It does mean that we take into account the sustainability at the end-to-end of our temporary and permanent POS, which is obviously, when you think about a company like L'Oréal, it's a big part of what we produce. We produce a lot of POS. And the permanent one, we actually donated to an association, all had after to be reused. So we don't put it in the landfill. So then 75% of our energy goes via solar panels at the distribution center. 60% is recycled water at the distribution center. We've seen more than 600 care experience youth through our program Face Your Future. I'll tell you more about this since 2009. 78% of our waste is recycled at the head office and 83% recycled at the DC. So this is our achievement so far. But there's a lot that we still need to do, a lot of work that we're currently doing. First of all, with the launch of L'Oréal for the Future, we have, so I'll go first with what we're doing internally. So we have first appointed our L'Oréal for the Future program leaders. So Rachel Biles and Alison Jarnet, which are here in the room. Please give them a big applause, because if you want to reach out, it's to them. So these girls are truly embracing this program, and it's amazing to see how engaged they are and how engaged my team at L'Oréal is on this topic. They have now 11 workstream groups working on different topics. It's amazing. So huge engagement from the L'Oréal team on the topic, and obviously led by Rachel and Alison, so well done. And then we have engaged into the journey of skilling all our employees at L'Oréal New Zealand, and they have extensive 6-hour training on the topic. Green Steps, it's called. So then internally also, we are looking at this 3 areas. So I'm just sharing with you the key ones, because otherwise I could speak for a long time. We have a roadmap which is extensive, but basically on the key topics on waste, our global target is 100% waste recycle or reuse by 2030. You would have seen in the film. So as I mentioned, we have achieved 83 and at the distribution center and 78 at the head office. However, there's still way to go. So also to say that L'Oréal makes donations of all their products to charities like the Salvation Army, City Missions, and Women's Refuge. In terms of packaging, we recognize the must play in solving the challenges faced with packaging waste in New Zealand in particular, and we're actively working within the beauty industry to find workable solutions, to find within the industry, with the associations we play in, which is Food and Grocery Council, and also Cosmetics New Zealand. In terms of water, our internal goal is to reduce water consumption by 35%. Our largest footprint is from our distribution center, and we have installed grey water tanks. We must also work to educate our consumers, and we're really conscious that that's a big part of the success of this program. And we have innovated, we are going to be launching some innovating shampoos, like dry shampoos coming our way. But we also need to communicate on how to wash your hair without using, without using as much water. For example, same with anything that's rinse off. We're also focusing on biodiversity. The target is 100% of our sites will have a positive impact in biodiversity, and it's no exception here in L'Oréal New Zealand. Although we don't have obviously we're not producing here locally, we are really looking into how to bring biodiversity back through our working sites. Then in terms also internally, how to reduce our CO2 emissions, right, which is a key topic. So we have, we're putting two examples of what we're doing here. The first one is obviously transport goods to reduce by 50% the baseline we had in 2016. So how are we going to do this? So like all businesses of important goods have an efficient supply chain to ensure low CO2 emissions is critical. The group manufactures across 6 regional hubs. Okay, so this enables goods to be produced specifically for the region's demographic, as well as reducing transportation. So the logistics route from factory to New Zealand is managed on a global scale, utilizing the routes which have either the less mild travel and delivering other goods along the way. This is managed at a global level, not a local level. Okay, so then we're also going to work on the green fleet, the cars, like a lot of companies have been announced. So we are reviewing at the moment, you know, are we going to go fully electric or no? I'm sure a lot of people are asking themselves the same question with the company's fleet. The reality of it is that it does need to be fit for purpose too. So we need to make the best calls based on that. But the aim obviously is to reduce by 50% our emissions based on our fleet of cars. Okay, so now externally. So first of all, in terms of packaging, so we are working, as I mentioned, actively working in the working groups with the Food and Grocery Council, which we're part of, and Cosmetics New Zealand to ensure realistic workable solutions for our packaging on waste in New Zealand. And as a business, we have partners with TerraCycle and also sustainable salons. So TerraCycle, we all know what it is. No, we don't. Do we? A little bit? No, not really. So TerraCycle is a global social enterprise which is present in 22 countries. It recycles the hard to recycle materials into new materials. So it can do playgrounds. I remember when I was in Australia, our Fructis packaging became a playground, a plastic playground, and can do constructions. So L'Oreal, we have at L'Oreal New Zealand a partnership with Garnier and Kiehl's, so we can now recycle from this year all skincare brands, and we'll be collecting it too through, we're partnering also with the warehouse, which will try to collect those packagings from the warehouse too. We also have a partnership with Sustainable Salons. So Sustainable Salons, who's familiar with Sustainable Salons? Okay, yes, some of you are. So it's, again, an innovative social enterprise. So it's targeting waste generated by the professional salons. So there's a lot of waste generated by salons. I don't know if you imagine the number of foils that you need, the plastic from the hair care used, and also hair, right? So what do you do with hair? So this Sustainable Salons has solutions for everything, and we are actively then encouraging salons to partner with them to manage the waste. Then in terms of our brand stewardship, we have our global commitments that were across all the like it's across L'Oreal, and then each of our brands, you've seen 35 brands that we have then specifically purpose and programs themselves. So I'm not going to go through all of them because I'll be here all night. However, we have that in mind too, and that we're communicating. The key ones are Garnier Green Beauty. And also wanted to share with you what we're going to be bringing to the consumer, because obviously the consumer is a key part of all this journey, is to bring them the product information labeling, which will be here by the end of the year, and it will be Garnier, which is a bit of flagship sustainability brand. So this product labeling, I'm not sure whether you guys are familiar, but we're not the only ones who would be doing this. Some retailers in Europe have been doing it since last year, but it's great as a manufacturer that we're actually going to be doing it. It will give an accurate vision of the impact of this product, takes into account the 14 planetary impact factors, such as greenhouse emissions, water scarcity, ocean acidification, or impact on biodiversity, measured at every stage of the product's life. So the consumer will be able to know what they're actually purchasing. So it's a very key part of what we're doing here, and it'll be in New Zealand at the end of this year on some products on the Garnier brand. And then to end on our program, which is probably again, I don't take any credit for it because it's been around way before I've been in New Zealand, but it's the program we've been doing. It's a community program. It's Face Your Future. And it really is something that we want to look at amplifying because it's so powerful. Yeah. So each year we've got 50 young people who come and have 2 days annually. So this picture was taken 2 weeks ago, by the way. So alongside with our non-profit partners, which are Voice and Caring Families, the government and caregivers, we defined a roadmap for the future to build pathways to education, training and employment. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, 600 plus care experienced young people through this program since the beginning. It is definitely our proudest achievement. We're really, really proud of Face Your Future. We want to make it much bigger. We are helping, it's a way for us to help the community, definitely building resilience of these young people, creating strong bonds and motivating this incredible group of people. So there you go for, I'm sure I'm over time. No? Yes, well, great. So thank you very much. That's it. And now I'll pass on to Chris Morrison. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, look, I'm here really to represent small and medium-sized enterprises. We've got Danone and Aurelie, who are very big, but I guess I'm just keen to talk to you about my journey with sustainable business. And I asked Bree to put together a few slides, and of course she found the most embarrassing pictures she could to put up, but that's okay. The first one is I started Phoenix Organics in 1985, yes, a long time ago, and begun by someone used to come into a health food shop where I used to work, and they sold ginger beer, and he was going to go back to America and said, hey, do you want to take over this ginger beer bug? I said, okay, and so for $50 bought this bug, took it home. We used to go around and collect used Steinlager bottles from behind pubs and then take them home and soak them in the bath, and the labels would come off and the cigarette butts would float out and so forth. And then we'd load them into our Thames van and drive them into town to a restaurant who had a bottle steriliser, and we'd sterilise them and take them back, and then with a very sophisticated jug and funnel we would fill up these bottles with homemade ginger beer, crown seal them, and then leave them for a week to ferment. And those that didn't blow up, we took around to the few cafes that were around at the time, and there wasn't too many actually. No labels, but anyway, that was the beginning of Phoenix. And then a year later, my business partner joined us. My wife, Deborah, was involved from the beginning, and we started the journey of Phoenix Organics. So that 20 years later, we were the largest organic beverage company in Australasia, and we sold it to Charlie's, another New Zealand company, who then went and sold it for a whole lot of money to Asahi, but that's another story. But so I did that for 20 years, and then second picture is about All Good Organics, and that's a banana story. And then Karma Drinks, of course, is about soft drinks. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those. So I started All Good Organics about 12 years ago, and teamed up with my brother Matt, who worked for Treasury, and a friend of ours, Simon Coley, who worked for 42 Below Vodka. So he was the marketer, Matt was the money guy, and I knew a little bit about small business. So we first of all decided that we wanted to bring bananas from our neighbours in the Pacific, because New Zealand used to get all their bananas from Tonga and Samoa and so forth, but then the big corporates came in and their business pretty much dried up overnight, and quite devastating to their incomes and their communities. But anyway, we discovered it wasn't that easy to find an organic banana and then ship it. We didn't have the logistics and everything, so we did persevere for that for a while, but then ended up drying the bananas in Samoa and bringing them back here, and we still sell those. But we got a sort of a taste for bananas, and then we partnered up with a company in the Netherlands called Agrofair, and we found a banana cooperative in Ecuador called El Guavo, and they were one of the first fair trade banana cooperatives in the world. And then we started bringing bananas, and everyone thought there's no way anyone's going to pay another $1 extra for a bunch of bananas, but we were passionate about it, and we thought Kiwis would be pretty supportive of supporting fair trade bananas. And we know that in the UK, 1 in 3 bananas are fair trade, and in Switzerland I think it's 50%. So there is demand for ethical bananas. And yeah, we started bringing in fair trade and fair trade organic bananas, and now we sell 400,000 bananas a month, and we put $2.4 million back into the communities in Ecuador through fair trade premiums, etc. And then last month we became perhaps the first banana company in the world to become carbon free. So that was quite an achievement for us. So we offset all our carbon, work with the growers, and work with communities in Peru as well to offset those carbon credits. So that's been really exciting for us, and Foodstuffs have been a great partner for us. But the supermarkets, we had to show that we were a different banana to others. So first of all, they made us put it into a plastic bag, which we hated. And then they made us put this plastic tape around them because they don't want the bananas going up to the checkout and then the checkout person charging them at the cheaper price. So we had to be different. So just last month as well, we've come up with a soft plastic recyclable tape, and it has been quite a challenge, and we've been looking around the world and no one else has been able to work it out, but our partners in Holland have done that, and we're very proud of that. And there's now 3 or 4 other fair trade banana brands in New Zealand, which is a good thing. We want all bananas to be fair trade and organic. So, and then a more recent thing, since March 2020, we've started All Good Oat Milk, which is a massive trend. Plant-based foods and beverages are really skyrocketing now, and people are looking at their diets and trying to change them into more, I guess, ethical diets and having less impact on the environment. And oat milk has really gone crazy. The big one is Aurelie out of Sweden, but there are heaps of oat brands now in New Zealand, but it's going really well for us. And our goal is to make it in New Zealand with New Zealand oats, but there isn't a factory here yet, but we're starting to have conversations with people in the South Island, so we're pretty excited about that. And then the other business that Simon and Matt and I are in is Karma Drinks. And so after doing bananas for a couple of years, we thought we needed to have something that was a little bit more shelf stable. You bring these containers of bananas in, we bring 4 40-foot containers in a week. You've got to sell them, and it's pretty stressful. But drinks, of course, you know, there's a longer shelf life, and you've got 12 months, you can export them, you can do all sorts of things. So we thought, well, who could we take on? We've taken on some of the biggest banana brands, Dole and Chiquita and so forth. So we looked at Coca-Cola, and we saw that they were selling 1.9 billion bottles every day, but none of them contain cola nut. So we thought, of course they're not fair trade or organic, so we thought, where do these cola nuts come from? So we found out that in Sierra Leone they grow cola nuts, and so we bought some and took them and experimented with them, and we worked out how to use them, and we also became fair trade and organic. It was probably one of the first cola companies in the world to be both fair trade and organic and use real cola nuts. So we've sold 25 million bottles in over 20 countries, and we're now moving towards B Corp certification as well. But the real point of difference for us is we've set up a foundation, and because, you know, we saw what was happening in Sierra Leone, and you're probably aware that they've been through a devastating 10-year civil war, which was brutal, and then more recently they've had Ebola. So it has been a very difficult time, and we thought really it's all very well just buying these cola nuts. It's not going to make a big difference, but if we put money back into the community and talk about it as the way we do business, that would be a good thing for us. And it really has made a difference to a lot of people, and we've concentrated mainly on education because we've discovered that educating young women is a very good way to bring people out of poverty, but also to fight climate change and lots of other issues around there. So every year we have 133 bursaries for educating girls. We provide support for 8 teachers. We built 3 classrooms, and we've done a whole lot of other things around these communities, these 8 communities in Sierra Leone and the Tiwai region. And, they're amazing people. We love working with them. We're partnering with them. It's not an aid thing. It's really a trade thing. And we're telling them, look, not coming in and we're with you for a couple of years. We're going to be here for the long run. You tell us what you want and we'll work with you to make it happen. So, it's been super rewarding. And the 3 founders, we've been fortunate enough to go to Sierra Leone and to sit down and talk with the people. And our chairman, his father wrote the constitution for Sierra Leone, and so that's where he comes from. It's been great. And this is just a short history of Karma Drinks in All Good. So started in 2010, did the bananas, looked into the cola nut, made our first bottle of cola in 2012, and then added new drinks, and then headed off to the UK, did the London Coffee Show, found out people are actually pretty interested in ethical soft drinks, won a few awards, started making cans. Then the sugar tax came along in the UK, so we started diversifying into other drinks like kombucha and switchel and sugar-free drinks. And then we got hit by Brexit, that came along, and then of course COVID. So it's been a rocky ride. New Zealand and Australia have done pretty well, but it has been very difficult in Europe. We've got a distributor in France. Just coming out of pretty difficult periods as well, but it's been very rewarding journey, and I've been in business, and I guess one of the things is organics. This is another cracker photo from Brie that she found on the internet, but anyway, it is a picture of my brother and I. We've got places out at Piha, sort of grow organic veggie gardens out there, produce quite a bit of odd-looking vegetables, etc. But I'm very passionate about organics. Happen to be the chair of OANZ, which is the umbrella organisation for organics in New Zealand, and really think it's part of the answer. Enhancing biodiversity, producing healthy foods, protecting our waterways, and building sustainable soils for future generations. And then my last slide is really, just the small things about work, and I think businesses have a real responsibility to right some of the wrongs in the world, and obviously we've heard what L'Oreal's doing, and we're going to hear about Danone, and but small business has a big part to play as well, and just paying, little things like paying a living wage and making sure people have enough money to make ends meet, and certifications like fair trade to make sure the supply chain is ethical and that those people, growing these ingredients, etc., are paid a fair price, and organics and carbon neutral, etc. So it's been a fun journey so far, and really enjoying it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce organized this forum. I think it's a great opportunity for us to talk about sustainability. And of course, it's a great honor to be invited here today that representing Danone, talk about our journey in sustainability, especially in New Zealand. And of course, I will keep, I think I take this opportunity as to discuss and learn from each other. So I will keep my presentation short, just to give you a brief. I think many people know Danone, especially in Europe. It's a very big company and a big brand. When we talk about Danone, people think about yogurt. When we talk about the yogurt, people think about the Danone in Europe. Actually, in New Zealand, we are not making yogurt. We are making infant formula milk powders. And compared to our brand, Aptimo and Caracare, the company actually is not that known in New Zealand. So let me just give you a little bit introduction about our operation in New Zealand. Let me put on the slides first. Actually, as I said, in New Zealand, our main product is the infant formula products, what we call ELN, early life nutrition business. And of course, we also have what we call specialized in nutrition for adults, for children, nutrition, for food for pharmaceutical purpose as well. But our current main product is infant formula. And in New Zealand, we have 3 factories. We have one factory in North Island to collect the milk, make the formulation, what we call the base powder. And we transport that to Auckland factory. Here we do the blending and the canning and finish into the finished goods format in the cans, in the tins. That's what you see. That's what you see in the supermarket shelf. And we also have our own can forming factory to supply the packaging material for ourselves. So we have 2 factories in Auckland. And overall, in New Zealand operation, we have about 500 staff and about 40 nationalities. So we are really diversified in the culture and it's multinational. So we are very proud of that. And of course, as I said, our main product is infant formula. However, we are really developing the healthy aging product. And I know that L'Oreal actually provide a product to give people beauty and confidence, and we provide a product to give people health and well-being. That's our objective.
Sounds better.
No, I think if we all work together for a better life for everyone, and this is part of the key for what we are talking about, the sustainability, because a better life. And in Danone, as you see that in our logo, we have this one planet, one health. So this is the mission for every Danoners in the 100,000 staff across the world. We are very well represented in every country, in every market. And of course, this is all, we have the same goal. And the nature, what we call the nature in Danone is one of our key business pillars. And of course, under the one planet pillar, we have 4 major areas as our, what we call the pillar. It's, one is climate. We talk about climate change, how we contribute and manage together with the society. We talk about regenerative agriculture. Actually, in New Zealand, we do have farm supply for the fresh milk. They are our suppliers. We work with them. And as an example, we have developed the milk apps for the farm managers to look at, to record all the farm operation information, the temperature of the milk, the fertilizer they use, so they can collect all these informations for our future support to them. And we also have this program called Cool Farm, which will help them to have more regenerative farm operation. And on the water side, actually, This is a very important pillar. And in New Zealand, we actually also doing a lot as well. I will talk a little bit more later on. And packaging material, as L'Oreal also talked about, that is a very important part. We need to look at the circular of the packaging material. Although most of our product here in New Zealand, in the tins, is recyclable, and we are still looking at how we can improve that. For example, some of my colleagues talk about a proposal that reduce the number of wraps of the pallets and to save the usage of the plastic film, as example. And of course, our ambition is really the group-wise, as a Danone group, is to have carbon zero by 2050. Remember that we are representing many countries, many markets. Some of them, they are very developed country. It's a lot easier to drive on this journey. Some of the market and country are developing countries. It's, I think, personally, I believe that it's a big promise to achieve as a company. And what we do in New Zealand, as I said, as you may know that as one of the big investment or decision is that to have biomass boiler project in Belkusa, in our spray drying factory in the South Island. That actually will contribute to the carbon emission reduction by 90 to 95% once we commission that, which we plan to commission it later June and start operational in September. So it's we are really looking forward to that, and of course we're working with the international partners on this. And on the agricultural side, I already said a little bit, and also we are looking at a soil health project together with our partner and, for example, agro research on that. We are applying some support from the government at the moment. So for the water side, we have upgraded our wastewater treatment plant last year, which gave us lift up the quality, the water quality standard a lot, which we called in Danone called Danone Clean Water Standard. And we are still upgrading the old wastewater treatment plant in the coming year, next year. And another significant one is the what we call the cow water recovery project. Actually, in the dairy industry in New Zealand, to recover the cow water, actually is the water from the milk. It's quite a common exercise. What we bring in through this project is the new technology to New Zealand. This is the first one. We are applying a biotech for the cow water recovery. So we have already commissioned that in March, and we really see some benefits now on the water recovery, water saving in terms of the plant operation in Belkusa. The ambition that we will save around up to 30% of water once we ramp up in the coming months. And for the circular economy, as I also give you an example already, we're looking at many areas how we can improve. Of course, the packaging material is the major one, and we do have a small amount of product in the sachet, and we are going to replace that with recyclable material. There are a few things actually we are doing in the coming year as our ambition. Actually, some of them is quite ambitious, I would say. In Danone, we talk about the 000, that 000 factory. That means that zero water discharge, zero carbon emission, and zero waste. So I think, as I said, once we commissioned the biomass project, then our carbon emission will largely reduced. And there will be a journey for the water recovery still, and also no waste, especially in some challenges in the South Island. The infrastructure is not as good as in Auckland. So, but we still have our ambition that by 2023, we will have carbon neutral as our ambition in Belkusa as a step one. And also the company, together with our colleagues in Australia, what we call the CBU, the sales and marketing arm in Oceania, that we are working on a B Corp this year. So we look at to get certified in 2022. So that is quite a big promise to the business, and we are confident. We are progressing pretty well now. And another one is that related to our product and brand. And of course, last year, we announced the Care Organic being carbon neutral as a first product at the end of this year. We are very aggressively working on that. Again, the biomass will be part of the contributor to achieve that. And for the whole brand, Care brand, which is a really Kiwi New Zealand brand, and we believe that it will represent our ambition in terms of the carbon neutral of branding by 2030 for the whole range of Care products. So that is basically what I want to brief everyone today on the Danone journey, especially what we are doing in New Zealand. And of course, I look forward to the opportunity to discuss and learn from you. Thank you.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou, ko Chris Lijzenga ahau, nā Frieslands o Kutipuna, e noho ana aku tamaki makaurau, ti hei mauri ora. E nā mana, e nā reo, rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, everybody. I basically just explained that I'm Chris. I'm from the Netherlands originally, but I've lived here most of my life, and I'm the Sustainability Advisor at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. I'm going to be the moderator for this event, but before I speak, we're going to have Mike come up and talk to us for a little while about SBC and what they've been seeing with trends in New Zealand consumers. Use mine.
How's that? Now we're talking. So one of the critical elements of SBC is thriving people, and you've been very patient sitting there for a little while. I suggest you all stand up, have a bit of a stretch, and let's get our thriving back again. And also a huge round of applause to my fellow three panelists here. Fantastic stories. Wonderful, wonderful stories from the three of them. One member and two future members, I think we're looking at here. No, but seriously, but fantastic stories. And what I think we see with all those stories, all the things that they've got in common are things that are common to the members of the Sustainable Business Council, which is humility, recognition of the challenge that's ahead, but the passion and willingness to lean into that and get on with it, which all three of you are doing, and I really applaud you for that. That's fantastic. I'm not going to get in the way for very long because it's more interesting to hear about them than me. So just three quick slides. I've been asked to talk a bit about trends. So I'm just going to have three slides. The first one is just this one here, which is a reassuring slide, which says that even in times of massive dislocation, massive challenge, the huge challenge of 2020, we're still on an upward trend in terms of New Zealand's commitments to sustainability. So this is a piece of work that we do once a year with Colin Brunton, looking at what we call better futures, asking a whole lot of New Zealanders what matters to them, and sustainability still matters. There's this big blip here in 2018. That was the plastic awakening. Everyone getting very excited about soft plastics and about plastic bags, which was fantastic. It was always going to be a bit of a blip, but look, that wonderful trend coming through. We're on a path that is not changing. That's continued on through this incredible crisis, and you're seeing that around the world. You're seeing that even as people are trapped indoors, even as people's livelihoods have been threatened, even as people their loved ones are being affected by this incredible crisis that's happening, they are still focused on sustainability, more so because they've realized it's come home. It's come home to them and they've realized that there are things beyond just the material that matter, and sustainability is all about those things that we were talking about before. And I think it's fantastic that you're rewarded, half of your reward is in the non-material things, not about necessarily the money. That's the first slide. Second slide, there's only 3. Second one, have a look at what does matter to people, okay? Kiwis are really worried about the cost of living. They really are. Anybody who's come back to New Zealand will be shocked by how little we earn and how much it costs to live here, right? You know, you're not going out as much as you used to when you were living in Paris, that's for real. And the reason for that is it's extremely expensive. Also, the gap between rich and poor in New Zealand is accelerating at a rate that is only higher by Brazil, okay? There's this rapid increase, and it's there. The haves and have-nots are now about the homeowners and the renters, and this is generational, and we're locking it in. And businesses are worried about this. Businesses are worried because that's impacting their people, and it's also impacting their customers. This is real, right? Protection of New Zealand children is still really high. For a developed country, our profile looks like a developing country profile. Violence in the home, violence against women is at huge levels, and it's not going down. It's staying up there. It's staying up there. And part of that is being driven by poverty. Those two things are very, very much correlated. And of course, affordable housing is also part of what that's all about, which is why things like sale of New Zealand land to foreign buyers, that's all about fear of losing control of one's life around being able to afford to buy a house. That's what all that's about. What's fascinating about all of that stuff there is those are precisely the sort of issues that you would see in developing countries. You would not expect to see those things in an OECD country, but guess what? You are right across the board. Right across the board, you're seeing those things. This is about sustainability, right? This is about sustainability. Violence is up there. And finally, we get to something that might look what we think about when we normally think about sustainability, which is plastics. And actually, look, it's dropped down. And why has it dropped down? Because of these other things that are right in front of people, the cost of living and everything else. What does this show us? It shows us that the old hierarchy of needs kicks in. If you don't actually look after people, you don't allow people to be able to live the lives that they aspire to live, how can they focus on things that are further ahead, like the environment? Put the mask on first before you help the person beside you, right? Well, people's masks are off. People are in pain, they're hurting. They're not focusing on things that are further up because they've got a whole lot of stuff that's in front of them. That's what that tells us. And then from then on, you can see a whole lot of things that you would expect to see, things like build-up of plastics in the environment, not enough waste is recycled, etc., right? So these are the things that really bother people. And so when we talk about sustainability, and L'Oreal and others have talked about this, we're not just talking about the environment. We're talking about sustainability in all of its aspects, which is why when we talk about it, we do talk about the 3 pillars and thriving people, thriving business, and of course, thriving environments, what it's all about. Last slide. So we belong to a very big network, a global network called the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Nice little snappy title. Love those ones. I always have to say it out loud because I can never remember the acronym. It's decided to do something which I never thought I would see it do because it's a relatively conservative organization. It's decided that actually continuing to go along on the same path and talking about sustainability as a technical process or a policy process or one of these, really, better hold that, shouldn't I? That's a better idea. This is a good look, isn't it? Here we go. My mother's going to be so proud. What they've realized is that that does not achieve what we need to achieve at the pace we need to achieve it. The changes are happening at such a rapid pace that actually BAU is no longer an option. And what you're seeing is company after company recognizing that it's no longer an option. And they're starting to use language which 10 years ago you would have seen in universities and you would have heard as the language of young radicals. You're hearing this now in corporates. You're hearing it around the board table. And why are you hearing that? Because this stuff is very real. It's not a modeling exercise. It's not a risk exercise. It's right in front of people's faces. And so our parent organization, we're part of this, is saying a lot of this is about mindset changes in the leadership of companies. It's about reinvention. Businesses must push for reinvention of capitalism to ensure that the power of private enterprise and competitive markets can be directed to long-term societal, environmental, and business prosperity. You can't just pretend that we can continue on the way we have for the last 50 years. It ain't working. We have to reinvent it. Resilience. Businesses need to better understand and incorporate resilience into their strategies. Why is that? Because if they don't do that, they can't anticipate and embrace and actually take advantage of these changes that are going to happen. It's about foresight, it's about looking forward. But you're going to have to be really resilient over the next 30 years because we had a pretty cruisy few decades there for a while, from 89 onwards, and we thought that was the new normal. Guess what? It was a blip. It was a blip. Normal, what do they always used to say? Normal broadcasting has resumed, which means that we will have cold wars again. It means that we will have real environmental challenges. It means that we're back in the real world. That means we need to put our big kids' trousers on. Yep, and we need to actually be resilient because some of this stuff is going to be pretty challenging. And the last one is regeneration, and I really salute all of our speakers on this one. It's not enough to reduce. We have to regenerate, we have to restore. We've already done so much harm. Those statistics that we saw before are shocking. Those social statistics here in New Zealand, you know, those environmental statistics. We've got to give back. We've taken. We've had a really good time. We really have. But it's been at huge cost. And so when L'Oreal and the other speakers talk about what needs to be put back, that's what we're talking about here. It's about regeneration. It's not just about sustainability. Sustainability is getting by. This is more than sustainability. This is about putting back. It's about regeneration. So these are the things that we think are necessary, absolutely critical to happen. And I salute people on this panel for embracing that, leaning into it, asking themselves the hard questions, putting the money in to make it happen and making it part of their core business, because only through those practical things will anything change. Otherwise, we'll just be the same. I think that's my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mike, this is working, right? Thanks for that. I was not expecting something like that. That was a very harrowing look at the way the world is, and I think a really important discussion around the urgency around this. We've certainly moved past the days of corporate social responsibility and that being the only thing, as a lot of you have mentioned, not just doing a little bit less harm for the world, but trying to have a positive impact. So I'm going to be fielding some questions to the panel. I have some prepared. We have around 30 minutes, but if any of you have anything you'd like to interrupt with, raise your hand, just yell it out. Questions, comments, observations. It doesn't need to all be coming from me. Another thing I'd like to say is I'm sure since the beginning of the pandemic, we've all had going through what I would say is a webinar fatigue, and that there's been webinar after webinar after webinar, online session after online session, panel discussion after panel discussion. And so I would encourage the panel, and I'll try to hold myself to the same standard, to be as authentic and as sincere as possible so that we can really get to the heart of the issue and not sort of tinker around the edges. Of course, we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go. But in the beginning, I have a few questions directly for some of the panel, and then we'll move on to some more general ones that I welcome anyone to answer. But we'll start with Aurelie and Leon from the two representatives of multinationals. So you've both got projects in the works, TerraCycle partnerships, carbon neutral products. What are your consumers demanding? Are you seeing sustainability as a trend from Kiwis in your categories? Or are you leading from the front, sort of anticipating that they're going to be interested in the future? Maybe Leon, do you want to answer first?
Okay, thank you. I think, first of all, I want to say that New Zealanders are well advanced in terms of recognition and awareness of environmental protection. I think we have a very good nature environment, and we are very proud of that. I think the awareness is there. And in terms of the product, I think when we promote ourselves as a nature-friendly product, there will be a strong buy-in. For example, when I talk about our biomass project, there's a lot of positive feedback and reaction from media, from public. When we announced our ambition for the Carrot Care organic product to be carbon neutral, we got a lot of applause and a positive feedback comments, because we do have our what we call the care line. We get consumer inquiries, comments, and from that platform, we receive the information. So in summary, I really believe that in New Zealand, especially, basically in Oceania market, in the ANZ market, there's a general acceptance and welcome in terms of the sustainability and the environmental solutions associated with the product. We do see that.
Cool. Thank you. Aurelie, do you think L'Oreal consumers are demanding sustainable products?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've got one of my team members who looks after social comms, so she can see social media as we speak and monitors our community. But I can tell you we get a lot of questions around our recycling schemes, a lot of do we test on animals, which we obviously answer that we don't, and we haven't been since 1989. So we get, that's how we're in touch with our consumers, through social media, and we get a lot of questions around it. It's actually very positive for us because we're obviously embracing it globally. But also when I share, because we're part of a region which is mostly Asian countries and now Middle East, to be honest, and we really stand out in New Zealand with the engagement from the teams, to be honest. And I'm sure Rachel will agree with me that every time she's got meetings with the other countries, we actually stand out in terms of the engagement around any sustainability topic. So I can see it from my team, I can see it from the consumers and how to react to social media. So it's really strong signs that there is that awareness. I would agree with Mike that probably there's more now that anxiety around what's going to happen tomorrow with what we faced last year, etc., etc. However, it is definitely top of mind around wastes in particular. There you go.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Chris, I want to ask you about organic. You spent a lot of your presentation talking about organic. I know this is something very close to your heart. What do you think is holding back organic products across the board in New Zealand? Because it's quite big in other countries, especially in the US. But here you don't see that much organic. What's holding it back?
Good question. So one of the things in New Zealand is we do not have a regulated market for organics. One of the few Western countries that organics is not regulated. So anybody can put organic on a product and sell it. Whereas in most of the developed nations, you have to meet a minimum standard. So actually there's a bill before Parliament at the moment, the Organic Products and Production Bill. It's going through, and that will allow the fact that those people that are certified organic can find a market and be paid a fair price for their products. And also it opens up markets overseas, so government to government recognition. So that is one issue. The other issue is that it is more expensive to grow organically, and the true cost of food is never, when you pay 75 cents for a head of broccoli, there are a whole lot of costs in there, and whether that is cheap labour or a cost to the environment, I'd sort of have to disagree with you a little bit in the fact of Clean Green New Zealand. I mean, it's a disgrace that our waterways, we can't swim, we can't drink the water in our rivers and so forth, and fisheries, etc. We are very fortunate because we're at the end of the world, we're isolated, we have a small population compared to the land, etc., and we've taken advantage of that, but that's catching up to us now. So we need to, I believe we've got to look after the land, we've got to be truly sustainable, and that's regenerative. And organics is part of that answer, is producing healthy food that looks after the environment and those workers that are having to deal with the chemicals, etc. So complicated thing, but the true cost of food is quite difficult to get across to consumers. So that 75 cent head of broccoli probably costs the environment and the workers, it's $1.50 maybe the true cost, as an example.
You mentioned that we're a small country, and I think if you're a company in New Zealand, you do often feel like you have to do things on your own. So I want to ask you, Mike, what's the role of collaboration and sort of foregoing the traditional idea of what is my competitor versus who can I actually cooperate with? And do you have any examples you can share of Kiwi businesses banding together to solve some of these problems that you sort of can't do on your own?
Really good question. I suppose the first thing I'd say is that businesses collaborate all the time. It's not possible to produce a product without enormous amounts of collaboration. And one of the things I was reflecting on a number of years ago was that we think of these three realms which are sort of artificial. There's business, which is highly competitive, and it's dog eat dog, and it's the first across the line wins. Then there's government, which is bureaucratic and hierarchical, and then there's the wonderful social sector, which is all very collaborative. Well, I've worked in all three of them, and I can tell you that that's not true. That some of the biggest hierarchies I've ever seen are in some of the large NGOs, massive hierarchies. I've seen incredible collaboration in business, as I have seen in business as well, as I have seen in government as well. But I've also seen in business enormous amounts of bureaucracy as well. So it turns out, put a bunch of humans together, and what do? They act like humans, okay? But they tell themselves some stories. And one of the stories that they tell them if they're in business is, we don't cooperate. Well, that's not true. You think about it. Every day you are reliant, first of all, on your workforce, which must cooperate. You're reliant on your suppliers. You must cooperate with them and collaborate with them. And you're reliant on your other value chains. You're collaborating all the time. And so it's not much of a stretch, actually, to then collaborate with other businesses for other goals and other objectives. And that's all that we say to our businesses. We don't say, don't become something that you're not. Become the best thing that you already are. So we're not saying to L'Oreal, don't become a really successful international company. We're saying, be the best of that. That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying here. Now, some examples. So a few years ago, it looked very likely that New Zealand was going to be one of the few countries in the world that didn't have a zero carbon goal, to be zero carbon by 2050. And one of the shames of New Zealand, one of the great shames, is that we talk a big game and we talk a lovely game. We really do. And sometimes we believe it too. But we are one of two countries that has gone back massively since 1990 on carbon emissions. And why is that? Because we started spending a whole lot of money on things like cars, two-car families, and all these sorts of things. Much of it fueled by debt, by the way, but we'll get to that on another conversation. But the point is that we actually started consuming more and producing more emissions. That's the real story. Now, we got a bunch of companies together who said, actually, that's not the story we want. We want to get in step with the rest of the world. We want to drive down carbon emissions. And our government talks a big game, but every year goes to the United Nations, goes to COP, and tells a big story about how well we're doing. And we're actually not doing well. Let's hold them to account. Let's say we need to get on a journey here to drive our emissions down. So what did? We put together a thing called the Climate Leaders Coalition. Climate Leaders Coalition, subset of ourselves and some others as well, to hold themselves to account to say, we are going to reduce our emissions as businesses down to carbon zero. What that did is it gave them credibility to say that we were doing that as a group. Now, they did this collectively. They held each other to account. That then gave them a voice to go to government and, importantly, to the opposition parties to say, while you're all having your conversations over here in the real business world, we need some certainty on the policy side to be able to make the big investments that will be necessary to decarbonise our businesses. And so they lobbied the National Party and the Labour Party and New Zealand First and the Greens and others to say, put your differences aside, we need this certainty. We need you to look out 50 years from now, from 30 years, 50 years from now. And as businesses, hard-nosed businesses, we need this because we're going to have to put the investment in. And guess what? It happened. We got the Zero Carbon Act. Everybody supported it. And we got the Climate Change Commission to put in place the certainty that businesses needed. So that's an example of collaboration. Another one, a smaller one, but just as important, is we've got a group of companies from right across the business sector who are saying, New Zealand is really bad on freight. We're really bad on freight. We don't take a holistic approach to it. We don't look at all the different types of ways in which we deliver our products to the consumer. What we need to be doing is working out a freight strategy. And so they went and had a chat with the usual suspects of who you would talk to about this, and everyone went, "Mammy, it is what it is." Well, this group said, no, it doesn't have to be what it is. So they put their own money up, got some experts involved, talked to people in other countries about what they've done, and they put forward a strategy, a pathway for decarbonising freight in New Zealand. And the good news is that by doing that and putting their own money into it, that's inspired the government to pick that up and go, oh, that seems relatively straightforward. Yeah, okay, we'll have one of those. So 2 examples of companies collaborating for a greater good that will ultimately benefit them as companies as well. It will reduce their carbon emissions, but it's really inspired them. Now they want to do more of those things. It becomes contagious, actually, this kind of empowerment thing, doesn't it? It's strange. Start collaborating.
Absolutely, yes.
2 examples.
When you said the government, I noticed you pointed at me. I'd just like to point out that
Pointing out there. It was abstract.
it's not me going
I'd
to the
forgotten you were from the
UN.
government.
I
I've worked for the government for many years.
I don't go to the UN and say that we're green and clean and green.
No, but I used to.
Okay, well,
But I used to.
before I go on, does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Yeah?
Tourism New Zealand continue to promote us as being 100% pure and clean and green when we are not. It's a lot of BS. You are so spot on. I'm on your side. But it's very true. And I've talked to them about this. And then they try and twist it around and say it's about 100% pure and clean and green experience. And it's not. It was originally when in 1998, Lachlan Smith, Minister of Tourism, I stood right in front of him and he talks to me, and it was about 100% pure, clean and green New Zealand, and we're just not there. And I get very angry by the fact that we keep killing overseas people. So I'm so pleased you made that.
Appreciate that. No, I mean, it is a bit of greenwash, and we've got so many things to be proud of, but let's be honest and tell the true story, and we're going to get heaps of people coming here. But just one last thing on that organic thing is Europe have a commitment to be 25% organic by 2030. Less than 1% of our land in New Zealand's organic. I mean, it's ridiculous. We get no support from the government because the same point that you're saying is there is this perception overseas for Zespri and Fonterra and others that we're organic, that we don't use chemicals, etc. So if you go out there with an organic product, think, oh, I thought all your stuff was organic. So we have to be honest, and we need government support for these things.
I noticed there was a question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very inspiring. But I have a question because I wonder how business can help speed up the process for public infrastructure, particularly for waste management. Thank you. Should I rephrase the question maybe? So my question is how a business can speed up the process to help developing public infrastructure, and particularly for waste management, for example, because every time I buy a product, I'm like, that's going to landfill. So how a business can help?
Leon?
Shall I start?
Leon, I think you've got an answer.
Okay. In Danone, as I said, that we actually look at different perspectives. In office, you will see that we have different rubbish bins for different waste, recyclable or go to the compost. So this is what we are doing, and also I think it's a good starting point from ourselves. I think this is the first message I want to say. And also, I just want to echo what Chris and the gentleman here talk about how we see New Zealand, as green or not, pollution in the river. I think the key takeaway from this discussion, for me, is that the awareness. I think the awareness is very important. If everyone actually have a critical eye on what we are doing, then we have a good starting point. We will have a great hope to be better. I think this is very important. And to just reply on on what you talk about, how we manage that, I think in New Zealand, in a city like Auckland, we have better infrastructure. And when I talk about the different ways to go to different rubbish bins in the office, we can manage that in Auckland. Send it, our waste management company, they will collect it and separate and treat it differently. And in Balkusa, this is true. We also try to put these different rubbish bins, but we know when they collect this rubbish, they put them together again. There's no infrastructure. This is something not only the company try to do, but also the whole community, the government also need to drive as well. So what I try to say here is that we are aware of that, we realize that, we do what we can, and it's a journey. It's not something we can do just like a straight on. I don't know if I can answer the question, but this is how I see it anyway.
Thank you for that.
Just building on that, and I think the key to this is partnership. What we've seen, and we see it a lot with our members, is that when they work with government, and that's local government, because I think local government's critical here, as well as central government, to work on practical ways to solve these problems, they tend to happen. When it's combative, your problem, nothing happens. But when you reach across and you say, actually, this is a really big problem. Belclutha's got a problem. I'm not going to pick on Belclutha. I'm from Greymouth in the South Island, so I know all about these small towns and challenges there. But actually, it's about partnering up. So, for example, Waste Management, the company, is one of our members. And that's one of the things that they've done throughout the country. They've said, actually, work with us on the solution, because some of these solutions are quite complicated. And there's a lot of pieces that need to be lined up in order for Belclutha, I'm not going to pick on Belclutha, on a small town, a relatively small town in the South Island, to have the necessary infrastructure. For 30 years, New Zealand has, we haven't invested in our infrastructure. We've basically thought that we can just free ride on the previous generation's investment in infrastructure. Turns out that actually you need to maintain your infrastructure and you need to refresh it as well. And we haven't done that. So you're beginning to see a little bit of that. But we need to lean into that as businesses to say, and this is how we can help you to do that. We would like the same things. We're after the same objective. How can we work with you to make that happen? So for example, with our members, we put forward 52 recommendations to the government. First of all, when they came in, and then as part of the Climate Change Commission, really practical things, including waste. We said, look, these are the things we can get on with straight away. They're not terribly expensive, but what it takes is some coordination, and it takes some consistency across New Zealand, because one of the biggest challenges in New Zealand is we're really huge fans of devolution. Well, I'm sorry, but with 5 million people, we're already devolved. We are devolving too far. You actually need some national standards around things like pollution and waste management, and then you can apply those things across the way. So that's why we're really leaning into the things that are happening with the RMA reform, for example. We see this as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to take some of this stuff forward. But for us, it's about partnership. It's not about blame. It's about saying, how can you come up with common solutions? Remember, we're all people. We just happen to be operating in different realms.
And just to build on that, to say what businesses can do, so we can definitely be in working groups to try to influence the government. Clearly, so there's working groups across the industry in beauty, but not only in beauty, and in the Food and Grocery Council, so we can work upstream, but also to the consumer and educate the consumer. So we have a key role to play, of course. Yeah.
Aurelie, I'd love to ask. So L'Oreal the head office of L'Oreal sits in another country and has subsidiaries sort of all over the world. L'Oreal is in many, many countries. So I'd love to, how much autonomy does L'Oreal New Zealand have for sustainability, given that many of these very, very high level strategic decisions are made sort of in another country?
So the great thing at L'Oreal is that, we are a very, very big company. A lot of, you'd think everything is like military, but it's not. So that's probably, I've been in this company now for 20 years because I'm too much of an independent, autonomous person. And I'm really glad to be in New Zealand, to be honest, because I'm really far away from the head office. You told me this wasn't recorded, right? No. So the reality is that I am extremely passionate about, I'm sure you can tell, about all these programs that we're doing. So together with Rachel and Alison, there's a lot of things. We've got a really ambitious goals that you've seen globally. So we have our frame, we know what we need to do, and we have a complete freedom within that frame, which is amazing. So we get to choose, again, with my program leaders, what we actually really do here. So I've presented to you earlier what we've chosen to focus on and what we feel we can really have an impact, because it is about that, is what we think really matters. So yes, waste, and to your point, trying to work on the product stewardship is a key point that we have. However, there's other things like Face Your Future and what we do for the community that's also really close to our heart and we really want to do. So absolutely, we have freedom.
Pretty amazing. So head office is never like, no, you can't do that.
No, they actually applaud. They go, well done, New Zealand.
Cool.
It's not me, it's the girls, huh? So.
And what's the situation like at Danone with the same?
I think it's very similar, like what L'Oreal just talked about. Danone is also a bigger company. It's a multinational, and of course we have a group ambition and instruction for every businesses across the globe. But in terms of the solution, it's really the local, tailored, because each country, each market is different, and each factory is also different as well. For example, when I talk about the canning factory in Auckland, we have different focus, and compared to the spray drying factory in the South Island. And in terms of the energy consumption, South Island factory apparently consume lots more because it's taken from the milk to the milk powders. And in Auckland, it's more blending and canning, and the water consumption is also very different. So in terms of, as an example, in Auckland, we focus more on the waste reduction, recycling. I gave the example on even on the wrap film for the pellets, how we reduce that. We talk about the sachet packaging material, but in Belkusa, in the South Island, we talk about the water recovery. We talk about the biomass boiler instead of replace the LPG boiler. So the solution will be different, and it's up to us to propose and submit our solution, and it will be supported by the headquarters. So we definitely have a lot of freedom in terms of what we do.
Cool, thank you. I'm told we have time for one more question, so I'm going to end this on a bit more of a personal note. I'd love to hear from each of you. What drives you to want to create a more sustainable world for us all? And do you think that the changes that we're all making and that organizations like all of yours have agreed to make will be enough, given how serious the problem is, how urgent the need is, and how important the climate crisis is? Do you think it's enough, what we've all agreed to be doing? Whoever would feel less like starting.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah, difficult question. No, I think the big question is consumption. We can't keep consuming the way that we are, and it's easier for small business, but for bigger business, they've got shareholders they've got to answer to, etc. They want to see return on their investment. Where the government keeps talking about GDP, etc. This is bullshit. We cannot, the planet cannot survive continuing the way that we're consuming. So we have to make some significant changes, and I'm the first to admit, I just feel like we're all tinkering around the edge a bit. And like I'm a dad, I'm a grandfather. I'm very concerned about the state of the planet and what we're leaving for future generations. So there's this 3-year government cycle in New Zealand. No one's ever brave enough to make big decisions, painful ones. God, we can't even get a capital gains tax. I mean, it's bizarre. But look, I'm an optimist, and I think we all need to make the biggest effort that we can to change the world, do what's important to us, and for businesses to step up and make some brave changes. And it might mean we all earn a little bit less money, etc. But we've got to work together and don't rely on others and don't rely on science alone. It's not going to be just technology that's going to get us out of this. We're going to have to change the way we live. And I think COVID has taught us quite a few things. Actually, we can have Zoom calls. We don't have to fly around the world. We don't have to fly down to Wellington for a meeting, etc. We've got to adapt. It might be a little bit more difficult, but we've got to make some changes. So that's my 2 cents worth. I am an optimist.
That deserves a round of applause. And
Do you know what they said during the Great Depression? Definition of an optimist was a person who took their lunch to General Motors.
before we close, would anybody else from the panel like to express what personally drives them and how optimistic they are?
What drives me? I think, like a lot of people here, I grew up in a time in the 70s and 80s, which was full of optimism, which was full of the fact that we could solve problems. And then in that sort of post 9/11 environment, that in the 2000s and into the 2010s, we became incredibly cynical. We kind of thought that these things were beyond us; they were just going to happen anyway. I never became cynical, and the reason I didn't become cynical is that I realized that it wasn't the planet that we needed to worry about; it was the humans living on it. You know, in a planetary sense, the planet will be okay. It will have a different collection of species living on it. It'll be fine. Okay, we won't be. So what drives me? I want to live on this wonderful planet, and I want my descendants to live on this wonderful planet and to experience it, because I've loved it. I've loved every moment of my 53 years on this planet, and I want to see more of it, and I want it to thrive, and I want my kids and my kids' to thrive on this planet, selfishly, because it's so wonderful. Am I worried about the planet? Not at all. The planet can look after itself. Gaia will take care of the whole thing through basically geomorphology and everything else that sits within that. That's okay. Let's worry about our own species and worry about the fact that the joy that we get from seeing other species on this planet will be gone. Because to me, it's not that humans won't be around, it's that we'll be alone. If you've ever read anything by a guy called Harry Harrison, he wrote a book called The Stainless Steel Rat, which was all about a future where all of the animals were animated, androids and things, because we had wiped out all the animals. Now, that's a very real threat to us. We may be here, but what a terrible, horrible place it would be. But I have hope. And the reason I have hope is that humans do care. Humans are able to mobilize, and humans can change. And the example the gentleman gave before is a classic example of that. If I look at my grandmother, who lived through World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II, and came out the other side an optimist, I think to myself, how dare I be a pessimist? How dare I be a pessimist? This is our moment. This is our moment where our generations have to stand up, and we have to do our piece for making sure that future generations will look back and they'll describe us as the great generation in the way that we described our grandparents and great-grandparents as the great generation. We don't get to be passive in this. We have to be active. So there's no choice. You don't get to go outside of this unless you're, Musk, and you fly off the planet and you go somewhere else. You don't get to be a bystander in this one. You are a participant. So you can either be an active participant and change it, which is what I'm trying to do and what you're all trying to do, or you can be passive and become a cynical shell of a human being who gives up. Well, it's not really a competition, is it? I know which one I'm going for. So that's what motivates me. What motivates me is we're going to lean into this thing. We're going to get it done. It's going to be hard. It is doable. It's going to take decades to do it, but we will do it. We've done it before. We will do it again.
Thank you. Anything to add, Aurelie?
Yeah, no, just probably just building exactly on what Mike has said. So there's no choice. I'm extremely optimistic because actually I know a lot of people with what COVID has happened are really embracing this, and I think I feel extremely lucky and privileged to be able to be a leader, because we all have a part to play, but when you're a leader, you probably have even more a part to play. And obviously on all the aspects, on the sustainability, the social part, which you know, is as important as the environmental one. There's so many things that we can positively impact and bring. And as a leader, I feel it's what personally drives me. That's what drives me, is to have that positive impact. And actually, it makes me really optimistic, because I can see my team behind this extremely engaged, and we leaders, we can really make a difference. So is it enough? No. Governments need to be on board. And when I say governments, I don't speak exclusively about New Zealand, it's governments around the world. There's going to be another COP popping up, which I'm sure is going to be more, how can I say, stronger in terms of the targets, right? Because there's no choice. And that is the real thing, there's no choice. So there you go, I'm really optimistic. I'm almost and I'm sure we'll sort this out like we always have. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to end it there. Thank you to the panel. Would you like to share?
Maybe just a couple
Go,
of words
please.
from me. I think the answer, I mean, when I look at that enough, never enough. There's a lot of things we need to do. But as we all know that we are business managers, but on the other hand, we are also consumers. So it's very important to us, to ourselves individually. I just personally feel that it's a good opportunity for me to work for Danone, who has a big ambition, especially on the nature environment. So I learned a lot, and of course, I'm proud that I can be part of that. And from what I can see is that the more we work on that, the more we will feel that how little we know, how little we have been doing. So I would say that, again, to create awareness, to get alignment, to get people work together, is our mission to drive and promote. So this is really
cool. Thank you. We're going to end it there. Thank you to the panel. I've certainly been humbled by how seriously your organizations are taking the challenges of the day, and how much you're doing in the space. I'm certainly surprised by some of the things that I learned, and I hope some of you are as well. Even companies as big and as multinational as L'Oreal and Danone are doing an enormous amount, and it's really important, because it's great to have small innovative companies changing the industry, but if the giants of the world don't get on board, then most of the impact doesn't happen. So thank you to you all. I'm going to hand back over.
Thank you. And just a closing word. I was just, first of all, thank you to everyone, but just reflecting on what you guys said around consumption. If I look at me, most probably 4 or 5 years ago, I had this high life living in Singapore and Dubai, traveling the world. I counted before coming here, and my work made me travel in 43 countries, which is crazy. So I think most probably the best thing that ever happened to me was to come to New Zealand. And it might not be the greener country on earth, but at least I get to meet inspiring people like you guys. And I feel extremely grateful for that. So thank you very much for your time. And I'm feeling quite energized and passionate. So I guess that if I ask you the question about like, are we going to continue to share those stories to inspire more people, small businesses and enterprises? I guess the answer is going to be yes, right? Yes, absolutely. So we have a little bit of sweets and cheese because you guys have been very patient. So over there. And also we've got a little give back, and you're gonna be like, come on, we've been speaking about sustainability the whole evening and you're giving this to us. That's just for you guys to remember what we've been talking about tonight. We've got some oat milk, and I'm drinking it, by the way. We've got some L'Oreal products that are sustainably produced. We've got a little teddy bear, I guess, from you. Just to remember, basically, the stories that we've been told tonight, and just, so this is kind of like sustainable consumption to me. And thank you very much again, and see you soon in June. And if you guys have any ideas, if you want to contribute, please come and see us, because the French New Zealand Chamber of Commerce is a non-for-profit. So we are not doing that for ourselves, we are doing that for the French and New Zealand Kiwi, French Kiwi business community. So please come along and speak to us. And have a great evening. Au revoir.
Work. Just to invite you people to join the room where we were welcome to enjoy last nibbles and drink.